Welcome to the Panza Panza Forum. In the Yoruba language, the word panza is usually injected into poetry to express an uncomfortable, uncensored, and inconvenient truth. The Panza Panza Forum is candid conversations about the life of African immigrants in America as it relates to their adaptation to their new home. While some may find it easy to integrate and can balance between retaining the original African culture while accepting the culture of their new home, many continue to struggle to find a balance between both worlds.
Hello and welcome to Panza Panza Live. This is a podcast where we discuss the lives of African immigrants and their assimilation into Western society as they raise younger generations in a country that is quite different from their own. We also explore the experiences of children of immigrants as they balance the African and Western cultures. We present to you this informative, interesting, and expansive dialogue about the intricate experiences of African immigrants in America.
Okay, welcome to Panza Panza. I'm your host, Kemisiri, and today I'm having conversation with Damilola Adeshina, a licensed therapist who holds master's degree in education in a clinical mental health from University of St. Thomas. I came across Damilola on Instagram where she posted a short clip addressing childhood trauma within African immigrant families. And thank you for accepting my invitation, as I said before. And as I said on my email, I really appreciate all your effort you are putting on talking about generational trauma and cultural conflict, as many African immigrant parents are struggling in relating to the emotional need of themselves as well as their children. So welcome to Panza Panza, Dami. I'm so delighted to have this conversation with you. As usual, when I have to connect with our younger generation, I love to talk to you guys. So as I always ask my guests, can you fully introduce yourself? Talk a little bit about your background as to where you were born, where you spend most of your childhood and adult life.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor and a pleasure. I'm looking forward to talking about myself, talking about mental health in the African community, etc. So a little bit about me. I was born in Nigeria, Lagos, Nigeria. My mom is Ondo. My dad is Ekiti. My dad came to the States first, so my mom came later after. I was about 2 years old. When we came, we lived in New York, but I did majority of my growing up in Georgia. So I ended up in a very small town called Thomaston, Georgia, because we were very, very poor. So, when you come, my dad didn't really understand the system, couldn't find a job, but he was finally able to get a job at a factory mill, which I don't know if they make those anymore, in a small town called Thomaston, Georgia. So we moved there. That's where I did middle school, high school, until I went to college, which is the University of Georgia.
Wow, that's really powerful. You see the struggle of African parents?
Yes.
So it's a lot of struggle. And I've come across many of our younger generation like you who grew up here, brought here at a very young age, or those who were also born here, who grew up within African immigrant home and talking about their parents' struggle as well, which I might share some books with you later on as well. Some of our first generation or second generation who wrote books about their life story. So for our audience who may want to know, can you talk a little bit about your childhood growing up in a Nigerian home? What would you say are some of the challenges or struggle of being the first generation African child? And what would you say are benefits?
Yeah. Okay, so I mentioned that I grew up in this small town called Thomaston, Georgia. And to be honest, I didn't know that I was a Nigerian. So Yoruba is what they spoke at home, and I understand Yoruba fluently. I can understand it. However, I wasn't forced to speak. So I just knew okay, my parents speak a different language. My siblings speak a different language. What's the big deal? But I wouldn't say it was until college that I was like, oh, I'm Nigerian, and this is what it means to be a Nigerian, to be Yoruba. But growing up, I just thought I was Black, like everybody else. Everybody looked like me. That's how they identified me. So that's what my assumption is how I had to also identify. And my mother and father never had a conversation with me about being Nigerian or anything. They had a lot of rules, obviously, but I just thought everybody had these same rules. I didn't know there was a distinction until I went to college. So growing up, in terms of my identity, I did not identify as Nigerian. Also, being African is not as trendy as it is now. So I definitely, when people found out, because my family was the only African family in this community, it's very small, like one Walmart, one McDonald's, no mall, no movie theater, nothing of that nature, right? How did they find this place? So my family is the only one. I actually thought for a long time, I was just telling a friend, I thought I was the only Damilola in the world because nobody had the name like mine. I was like, oh, everybody's named Jessica, Natasha, Sally. And it's like, what's your name, Damilola? I was like, yeah, I know. I think I'm the only one. So I thought that for a very long time. It wasn't until I went to college. So it was difficult. Oh, and then my mom would only allow us to be friends with people in the church community because those are the people that she trusted. So if I had to have friends, they were in the church, and our church was predominantly Black Americans. So that's where my community was. So that's what I identified with. So I understood that because that's how people see me. They didn't see that I'm Nigerian. They saw that I was Black. So that identity took over the African aspect of me. So when I went to college, I joined the African Student Union my freshman year. And that's when my eyes began to open. And I got really involved all the way through senior year, where I became the president of that organization. I met other Damilolas finally, male and female. And my community of friends honestly became Nigerian or African or whatever, like learning more about different types of people within Africa. My minor was in African studies. I studied Yoruba for 4 years in college. And I even went to Ile-Ife to study Yoruba for a summer as a study abroad, because I became so engulfed in my culture and learned to love it. I was so excited. My first time going back to Nigeria after coming to America was going to Ile-Ife. And I was like 2021. And I met a sister and a brother for the first time. And you guys know the story of how they have many siblings and we're like separated. That's very common. So I think I was 20 years old, going to Nigeria for the first time as an adult, I guess you could say young adult at that time, seeing the country for myself that my mom and dad would often talk about, my older siblings would often talk about, and experiencing that just really solidified it for me to where I think carried the identity of like, no, I'm Nigerian, but I'm very much American.
Wow. That's so powerful. What you're telling me now is a little bit different from some of the first generation, second generation that I've interviewed. Because what some of them have said during the forum that I've had with them is that many African parents do not want you to intermingle with other people of color, especially Black Americans. But your experience happens to be different because, your mom trusts the church, which was predominantly African American church. Those are the people that she trusted that you could intermingle with. And how did that actually help you through your journey in college and, in life in general?
Yeah, it's interesting because if we talk about generational trauma, which I'm sure we'll get to later, my mom actually had a lack of trust for Nigerians and for her community because her experience, my dad was a Celestial pastor. So her experience with Select Church was just, obviously it's all Nigerians, was very messy, very catty, very messy. My dad lost the church, so much, so forth, people trying to catch people in a lie, so on and so forth. So I think she liked the fact that we were isolated from other Africans and Nigerians. This is not a conversation I've had with her, but as you said that, it made me think, because my mom did not have one single Nigerian friend.
Wow. Even
like our family, I didn't meet my cousins really who lived like in Maryland abroad until I was in high school. And it was just my immediate family, my siblings. That's all I knew until I got to college, that as other Nigerians and other Africans. So I think my mom's disdain and trauma that she experienced with her and her community indirectly impacted our view and perspective as of the community. So I think in terms of how this helped me in college, honestly, when I got to college, I became only engulfed in the African community. I actually felt I did not belong in like Black American. I felt really insecure because I saw the distinct differences of how I grew up. And then I found people like, oh, your mommy did that too? Oh, you eat jollof rice too? Wow, that is so interesting, right? So when I found my people, I didn't look back. And I think I'm able to relate with African Americans because that is the culture and lenses with other people see me. But in terms of when I was in college, solidify my identity, I saw it and I just didn't run back. I just like, oh my God, these are my people. I finally make sense. I don't stick out because in high school, because I was a small town, I'm usually like one of two Black people in the honors classes. Wow. The other Black girl, she was mixed. So I'm really the only one. So I'm not white enough for the white people, but I'm not Black enough because I'm too smart, quote unquote, for the Black people. So I just never felt like I fit in. So it's just like, where do I fit? Where do I fit? Where do I fit in that regard? So I just excelled in academics, excelled in extracurricular activities to try and find some sense of validation. But when I got to college and I met other people like me with my name and my experiences and, oh, your mama did that too. I fell in love. You
fell in love. You just on the other side.
I did.
As you're talking to me, it reminds me of a book. I actually did a review on it on my website. It's called A Particular Kind of a Black Man by Tope Folarin. I think it would be a very good book for you to read.
I'll look into it.
He went into, New York Times, great review on it about his life, growing up in a Nigerian home and how it was, because as you were talking, reminds me of his story because he grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood whereby he was looking for connection with other Blacks, but it was limited number of Black people around the area, So I'm glad, that, you have a completely different experience, So knowing that many African parents do not like to dive into uncomfortable conversation with their children, especially African immigrant parents, can you think back to your childhood? What conversation would you have preferred to have with your parents growing up?
Oh, that's a really great question. Oh, man. I think a conversation that I would have preferred my mom to have with me is interesting because we started to have these conversations now. I don't know if you know much about my story, and I shared my story and my trauma history on my podcast. And I know your viewers here, so I will share this and feel free to edit out as necessary. But growing up, I was sexually molested. I recently told my mom about it in 2020.
Wow.
And so I thought I would never share with her, but I honestly think it was just the grace of God. He just wanted it to be that way. Share it with her. My mom just turned 68 last week. So rebuilding our relationship, because when that took place, I experienced a lot of, like you say, I guess PTSD. Yes. And it changed my view of my mom and how my mom showed up in that situation and circumstances. But some of the conversations that she and I are honestly having now as we're rebuilding is really like, I didn't feel protected by her. I think that the struggle of an immigrant home is that they are constantly surviving and nothing else mattered. And you didn't have an opportunity to flourish. So all that mattered at that time was the struggle. So anything extra out of the basic needs of house, food, and water is extra and you don't need it. So I wish she would have had more conversations of like, not so much this is why, but like you matter. Like I'm here to protect you. Even talking about more conversations, even around sex, honestly, and struggling about that for myself. And like, why you never talk to me about that? I had to learn about that on my own and these experiences and so on and so forth. And she shared her experience of like, well, nobody talked to me about it. I did the best I could. I thought I was protecting you. I gave you a roof over your head. And I was like, but I needed much more emotional support, emotional connection from you. Because even now I struggle with doing the extra, quote unquote, for myself outside of my basic needs. Like I'll be celebrating my 35th birthday in April. And my husband's like, we should have a party. I'm like, oh, we should, but is that okay? Like, I don't know. Oh my goodness, that sounds like a lot. So this is the first time I'm celebrating myself in a big way for 35. And I think it's kind of doing the work of undoing and like, yes, I have my needs, but it's okay to like do other things outside of my basic needs. But just to answer your question, going back, like I wish my mom would have had more conversations about just not even conversations, just like you matter, like I love you, like I know you're surviving, but pause to be present with me in a moment to experience me. Cause I think she just experienced around us because she was so busy trying to survive. Because my mom eventually became a single mom of 7 kids because my parents divorced. My dad was deported back to Nigeria. So it's her and all of the kids. So obviously a single parent of 7 kids, like we have to eat. So I understand and get her perspective, but I just felt overlooked. When it's time to serve people, you forget to serve me. And I was like, oh my God, you forget I'm alive? Like, did I matter to you? What was happening? So I think those are the conversations she and I are having now. To answer your
Are you the only girl?
No, I'm one of 3 girls and 4 boys.
You're the oldest?
No, I'm number 5 out of 7.
Wow. You see, I'm glad you're able to have that conversation to understand what she was going through. Because back home, it takes a community to raise children.
Mm-hmm.
Many things she was doing on her own, she won't be doing it.
Exactly.
So to her, it's like a survival. Let me just make sure there's food on the table. What else could you need? Mm-hmm. Because when we're talking about trauma of what a child may be going through, as an African, many of these things we're not educated about when it comes to mental health. We just feel like you have food on the table, eat whatever you want to eat. Mm-hmm. And keep it moving, So what else? You have shelter over you. We are not homeless. So that's much more important than anything else, which I'm glad that you actually talking about that, iron all those things out to understand what was she struggling with.
Yes.
And thank you for your own honesty as well, because it takes a lot to be able to feel comfortable talking about this.
Oh, yeah, I've come a long way.
And many people who will listen to it will be empowered by your conversation, the conversation we're having today. Even back home, there's so many women who could tell you that they've been sexually abused. Mm-hmm. But sexual violence towards women is just coming out to be discussed now, because back home, it wasn't something that was discussed.
Right.
Sometimes they end up blaming the victim. Mm-hmm. It depends on who actually did the assault. Right. Sexual assault on someone. If it's somebody that they cannot really approach to confront, they kind of like, let's keep that child away from that person. So it's a lot that when you're talking about patriarchal society, so much power given to men instead of actually bringing on the surface of what is going on. How women are suffering, children are also suffering. Thank you so much for that. That was so powerful. And in college, you were able to navigate through. So now let's talk about your profession as a mental health practitioner. What inspired your career to become a therapist, focusing on the area of racial and ethnic minority and immigrant mental health?
Yeah. So after I graduated college, my public relations was my major, but I knew my junior year, I didn't want to do anything with that major, but I couldn't start over. I didn't have the money, the funds, the finances, and my mom is expecting a degree. So I graduated. And so I got a job teaching with Teach for America in Houston. And it was while I was teaching my second year that students would just really come to me with their issues. And I was like, wow, people are out here suffering. Big issues, even bigger than what I felt like I've experienced and could understand. So at that point, I decided, okay, I wanted to be a therapist, but I thought I wanted to be in schools. So I went back, got my master's in clinical mental health. And I did start in schools as a clinician. But as you know, the school system just became really saturated, more, I guess you could say diluted and burnt out really quickly. I'm 1 to 500. It became more social work and case management than actually seeing progress in work. So I left education. And when I left, I decided to start my own practice. And I was talking to my marketing director at that time, who's also Nigerian. She's like, do you realize you're a unicorn? I was like, what do you mean? She was like, do you know how many people would want to have a Nigerian American therapist, right? Like share your exact experiences. And I was like, really? I didn't understand that there's a new shift and wave of Nigerians who understood mental health and wanted it, and also wanted someone like them where they don't have to fill in the blanks of the story. So in creating my business, my plan, etc., I was like, okay, I'm going to focus on my community. I'm going to see what's out there and, give the rest to God. And I'm so glad that I did, because I honestly feel like in doing this work, it makes all of my experiences growing up make sense. Every day I'm talking to clients. We can speak Pidgin, we can speak Yoruba. Like they can tell me something, my Muslim clients talking about Ramadan, and they don't have to explain context. Like I get it. I understand. And I honestly think like it's truly, truly a blessing. Like life makes sense for me in this role. So I think like I want people to experience the healing and the growth and development that I have, because I feel like a part of the big reason why I shared with my mom about my trauma was because I have 2 kids. I have 2 boys, and I don't want to pass that on to them. And I understand as a therapist, what I don't work on and fix, my kids will have to deal with and fix. Because the issues that I fix, it didn't start with my mom. It started before her. And my experience of sexual trauma, honestly, is a generational curse that my siblings and I've dealt with. I'm not the only one of my siblings, right, that have experienced, I would say all of us have experienced sexual abuse and sexual trauma, including my mom. That is a curse. And I don't want my children to deal with that. So if I don't want my kids to do that, then I have to do something drastically different. And I want that same freedom for my community. I really, truly do want Nigeria to be a better Nigeria, but we have to see better. Sometimes you have to see it before you can do better. So I think if it wasn't for my experiences being exposed, seeing other people doing things and recognizing like, oh, I don't have to live life this way, then I can now expose other people. So that's a big part of like my mission as a therapist, is just hoping that the next generation through the people that I support will be forever changed simply because someone is like processing trauma.
Thank you so much for that. That's so detailed. When we're talking about therapy counseling, some people may not know what it is. So can you define to those who may listen to this podcast, what is mental health? What is mental illness? When should someone seek mental health care?
Yeah. So mental health, essentially, how do I say this and not be too nerdy? I guess essentially is thinking about like your emotions and how they impact you on a daily basis, right? Now, sometimes our emotions, when they impact us to a point of severity, it has physical repercussions or consequences. When it becomes abnormal to the point where, man, I experienced something emotionally, my body processed it a certain way. So now I have these symptoms such as I'm not sleeping, I'm not eating, I'm constantly thinking about something, or I'm avoiding something for long periods of time. That's where it becomes a mental illness, right? Some mental illness are chemical within the brain and scientific. I mean, some are, I guess you could say, brought on by extremely stressful events, whether acute or chronic. So either like a one-time event, like a car accident, or chronically, like my mom constantly disrespected me throughout my life over a period of time, right? So when I think about like mental health, think about your emotions, but being sick. It's like the people call it the flu of the mind kind of situation. Now, why people would go to therapy is simply the same way you go to the doctor. When you break your leg, you want someone to fix it. So you go to a doctor to help you. Well, if my mind is constantly, I'm not focusing, I'm spiraling, I need help, I go seek a therapist, right? Now, therapy where I'm using theory and methodology around the psychology of your mind, but there's also psychiatry where they dispense medication in order to help. But not every mental illness needs medication. There's only the ones that are chemically based and bound. So hopefully that didn't confuse some of your listeners.
No, it's good that you're able to break it down like that, because some people may not understand, which is what I was also trying to ask you. Sometimes you hear some people call it therapist. Some will call it counselor. What is the difference between being a therapist and a counselor?
There's no difference, honestly. I think like when you think about licensing boards across different states, some people call it licensed professional counselor. Some people call it licensed therapist or something. So I think the terms therapy and counseling are intertwined. They're synonyms of each other. And honestly, states just kind of pick different terms and different words, but it's the same thing. But I think when we think about modern day society, people like the word therapist because it sounds more like, ooh, fancy and great, because ideas like you're using theory in order to kind of help people go through things. Whereas counseling, people kind of see it as a lower kind of field and level and not as in detail ingrained. It's interesting, though, when people ask me, what do I do? I can't say therapist because then they say, well, what kind? Physical? So I find myself having to say like, oh, I'm a mental health therapist or I'm a counselor. Yeah,
that's true, because you hear some people, oh, I'm a college counselor, high school counselor. So you don't know which one is which, so that's to clarify, because you might have some parents who their children are in school and they said they need to see a counselor, and misunderstanding that, okay, you're seeing a counselor for college. Okay, so maybe that would be also be therapist,
right,
so
exactly.
It's different definition for. So as a therapist, your focus is on certain mental health diagnoses. I know some therapists may focus on eating disorder, anxiety, depression, while other focuses on other forms of diagnosis. What's your own focus?
Yeah, so I focus on anxiety and depression because those are typically the highest symptoms of people's, I guess you could say, experiences that they have. So anxiety and depression, childhood trauma is a big focus of mine, simply just kind of based off my experiences and my expertise. Childhood trauma or any kind of trauma, so to speak, of that, whether acute or chronic. I also focus on perinatal mental health. So that's women who are pregnant before, during, and after, infertility issues, women who are, we could say, like, it's a community called childless, but not by choice. So whether like medically they can't have a child, or financial strain, or the strain on the marriage. So there's a huge community of those types of women that I also work with. Couples, I work with a lot of couples. Couples are hard, but I do work with them, and families as well.
Wow, that's really something. So in terms of trying to locate who, you have to understand your diagnosis. What do you really want? To find the right person that specializes in that field to get help for you. Exactly. So immigrant family and the taboo of seeking mental health care. So as a mental health provider, you are aware of the stigma and the taboo associated with mental health and mental illness in many aspects of the world. Many places all over the world, there's always a taboo, especially among African immigrant and refugee family. Discussing mental illness is a taboo due to a cultural perspective or what mental health looks like. In terms of describing mental health as somebody who is crazy or mad or a naked person on the street, that many are familiar with. The fear of bringing mental shame to family may play a major role in the barrier of seeking mental health services if needed. That stigma is not only limited, as I continue to explore, to immigrants family or refugee family. If you look at among the African American community, there's has always been misunderstanding of mental health and mental illness. To educate African American community about mental health, many mental health advocates among the African American now training barbers, religious and community leaders to become gatekeeper to help bridge that gap through their involvement and how they could reduce the stigma. So can you shed some light about stigma associated with seeking mental health within African immigrant community?
Yeah, I think from my experience, I remember when I shared, obviously I have siblings who grew up in Nigeria, but came to America at a later age, like they were like 17. So they're very much ingrained in the culture. So I think from my experience that I know and learned when I shared with them that, this is what I'm doing and I'm setting boundaries, they saw me as like, I'm evil, or I'm the one, because my perpetrator at the time was getting sick and is also a family member. I'm the one who causing him to get sick. That's what they told me. And that why would I seek therapy in that regard? I'm just kind of ignoring it, or I'm being westernized, quote unquote. So I think that I believe that a lot of African communities believe that therapy can be something like evil, right? It's not spiritual. If you just pray hard enough, that it would just go away. The idea and concept of setting boundaries, like I'm wicked, I'm a witch, it's just me, that kind of situation, that we don't talk about our business to other people. What is wrong with you? Or you're really just being westernized. You just got to work harder. You just got to do this harder. So I think it's just kind of a lot of not even ignorance, but avoidance, because they don't know. If no one has shown them what can be possible, then how would they know? So even when I get a lot of comments on my page and negativity that I'm spewing right now, I don't even blame those people, because somewhere somebody down the line taught you that mindset about that. And they do that in order to avoid the reality of the situation, but also because no one has ever exposed them to what can be true. Because if everybody around you is doing the same thing, everyone is not setting boundaries, and everyone is, how do you say, I guess, engaging in some type of mental health or mental illness, then it seems normal. So it's not your fault that you can't see this, right? That's how deep generational trauma is. It has nothing to do with you, right? This has happened for generations, but it is your responsibility to stop it and to say, no, it ends and stop with me. if that makes sense. So I hope that answered your question. I feel like
yes, you did, because many of our community do not understand that part of mental health, addressing mental health, you could also create avoidance, kind of like coping mechanism, whereby you are over religious.
Yes.
Or, you have to go to parties all the time. There's so many things that you work all the time you have to work. You have no time to even sit around, because if you sit around, all kinds of thoughts will come to your mind, and you don't really see that as part of mental health issue.
Right.
As if it's something, because like we've been saying, back home, as long as you have food to eat, we don't even consider depression to be part of mental health issue. Because we look at depression, that people who are depressed, you can only depressed if you are poor, or if you're going through medical issue, or if you lose your valuable items, property. Those are the things that could depress you, but you pray about it, and one way or the other, it will come back to you. So those are the things that actually debar people. So apart from the stigma, there's some other challenges that I've seen within African immigrant community when it comes to seeking mental health care for both adults and the children. They may experience some form of lack of insurance, because I believe do you take insurance?
Yeah, I do. I do accept insurance.
Because there's some therapists who don't even accept insurance.
Right.
And some psychiatrists who don't even accept insurance. They are private. When we talk about mental health issue, also mental health care in this country mostly is for rich people.
It's a privilege.
It's a privilege, mostly for whites, I would say, to qualify this, whereby you see white women, they're going for therapists. Each one of their children have therapy and, been seeing psychiatrists, and, they're seeking the help to address the issue. So for us, that lack of insurance, lack of mobility, sometimes it might be so far away, from where the help could be. Okay. That could be part of it. The living standard, which is affordability. Some may not even be able to afford it. Lack of family and community support, also part of what we talked about, whereby you don't want to share your experience with anybody. So I want to ask you, do you see mostly first generation and second generation, or do you have also parents in part of your services?
Yeah, I don't have any parents currently as clients as together, but I do have clients who have kids. Not all of them come for parenting skills, but I would say 90% of my clientele are African and first generation. And I would say of the 90%, about probably another 95 are women, because I specifically target women, but I do have men clientele as well, especially when I see couples, because I'll see them as individuals, even in a couple situation as well.
Wow. Well, I'm glad that, at least more women, because they are now acknowledging it and recognizing and seeking the help. Now, let's talk about something in our community where we normalize suffering and ignoring trauma. You say intergenerational, we may also lack understanding of how intergenerational trauma could be passed down from generation to generation. Sometimes there's a belief that comes from both cultural and religious system. We sometimes say life is about suffering, and sometimes we tend to compare suffering. I might say, what do you think you're suffering about? When I was growing up back home, I have to walk 10 miles in order for me to get to school. But then you don't have to deal with the issue of race.
Right.
And discrimination, and being in a country where you don't have the community connection that is absent. So, for example, someone may just play down your experience by comparing it to their own suffering, who have a greater suffering. How does one type of belief impact our mental health, and how do we address mental health need within our community? How can we address it?
What I think about, I will back up and say, the age range for a majority of my clients, I would say, are between ages 25 to about 40. I don't have a whole lot of clients over 40. And I always question and wonder about that generation, what would it take for them to kind of stop, pause, and reflect and want differently. So I think about my mom. My mom is now in therapy and she's 68. And I think for my mom to get to a place to benefit from it, she had to have a bit of humility. She had to humble herself to recognize I made some mistakes. I did not get it correctly, but I desire to be different. I desire, like what she shared with me when we were reconnecting, I want to enjoy my grandchildren and my children for the rest of my lives here. And in order to do that, I have to fully shed myself, face who I am, and be willing to change. So I think when we think about our community and how people, who've never been to therapy can come to it, like, don't you want to enjoy? We don't have to suffer. We don't have to compare suffering. There is an option. You have a choice. You can choose differently. You really, honestly, truly can choose differently and enjoy the rest of your life. You don't have to be in opposition, right? So I think like a lot of reasons why I feel like Nigeria can be the way they are in the community is because of the collective trauma we faced as a community from when it was back in colonial times, right? You had to survive. We don't have to do that anymore. Like, we don't. You brought me to this country to have a better opportunity. So I want to enjoy, I want to thrive. I don't want to survive anymore. So I think my mom is coming to a realization of like, oh, like I can thrive too. Okay, how do I do that? I want to enjoy while I'm here on earth is what she says. So I think humility goes a long way in recognizing that there are mistakes. There can be a better future, even no matter what age you are.
Yes, yes. So from your professional perspective, how can we effectively bring mental health awareness to African immigrant community? Because I'm not just talking about Nigeria alone. We have many of the first generation. When I went to your website, I saw the list of many of our first and second generation who are also connected on your website. And this field is uniquely organized and effective way of educating our community. How can we bring those people to, bring their expertise to the community? Because to me, I tend to educate myself for what I don't know, whether I'm learning from the Asian community or Latino community, where many of their children who were born here or brought here at a very young age, and they're in different professions, and they go back to that community. You won't even know that this one is Mexican or this one is Dominican or Puerto Rican. They all come together and find out, how can we bring this awareness to the community? What do you think that could be?
An effective way? Yeah, I think what I have done, and because you mentioned you're educating yourself, I've learned of and been able to connect with a couple of therapists who are in Nigeria and practice in Nigeria. And I've learned a lot from them in terms of, I guess, societal understanding of mental health right now and the areas and communities in which they work. And I know you said not just Nigeria as well, but I think like an effective way in which we can bring mental health to our community, honestly, not only educating ourselves, but talking about it. Talking about it to the people in our circles, to the people we are closest to the people in our communities. Because I think by talking, we share, and by sharing, and then it spreads, because it cannot be done in isolation and on one person. It takes every single person. So I think that's why I created this directory on my website, because I knew and understand, like, I can't do this by myself. I can't see anybody. I'm already restricted to just the state of Texas because that's where I live. So if there are other people who are doing this work, then get on my platform and let's do this work together. So not only share information, but share space. I think like not being so competitive with one another around what we have and what we have to offer. I'm not in competition with you. There is plenty of space for everybody in order to be here. Because I think that was one thing people ask me, why are you giving directory and do it for free? Why not? Why would I charge? What is the purpose of that? That defeats the whole thing. I'm not trying to profit off of that. I truly want people to change. So I think sharing, educating, but starting with the people like in your community, in your home that you do everyday life with.
Wow, that's really powerful. And we need that because I've said it on this platform before. We have many of our children who are in different professions, especially Nigerians, you have to be a doctor, this and, be a professional and in different fields. But the idea of giving back to the community is not something that many of our children practice. And in this country and what I've seen all over the world, there's some people that they never even have as much education as so many of our children within our community but they are giving back. And the world recognized them, the society recognized them. And I've said it, you could graduate from Oxford and then combine it with Harvard. Those who are really recognized are the ones who are giving back to the humanity of the community they belong and others as well. Because, I really appreciate that you you're doing that, which is very, very important. So can you enlighten those who may listen to this podcast, the difference between mental illness and drug and alcohol or other form of dependency as a coping mechanism?
So drug and alcoholic addiction is a type of mental illness, because we have I guess you to get really kind of specific, but it's called the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistic Manual, where people use to kind of diagnose. So when we have drug and alcohol addiction, that is a type of mental health illness within that realm. There's different categories, in different ways those disturbances can kind of show up, if that makes sense. So I think when you think about it, think of mental health being the umbrella of it. And underneath the umbrella, you have cocaine addiction, you have alcoholism, you have opioid addictions, and so on and so forth. So mental health illness is just the umbrella that all these things fall under, but not only on the alcohol chemical dependency side, but also like anxiety, depression, OCD, and so on and so forth.
And you have some people addicted to food.
Yes. Yeah, so binge eating, and anorexia, not eating, things of that nature.
Yeah, and things like that, or even sex in itself.
Yes, that is an addiction as well.
It's a form of addiction. So can you further explain to our audience why family, friends, and religious leaders within our community cannot be your therapist or somebody in a professional help?
Yeah, I think it's very dangerous when you have family, friends, or pastors or etc. who are not trained in these specific ways, because they can trigger you and they may not know it. And then instead of you leaving feeling better, you feel worse because they may open or go have you talking about an experience, but they didn't prepare you to have great coping skills and coping mechanisms, right? And I think that before this idea of licensure for a particular field came into place in the African American communities, in particular, it was the leaders in the church, right? Or the matriarchal or patriarchal figures who play the roles of counselors in that system. But I think as we kind of developed as a society in modern day, I think it can be kind of dangerous. But a lot of people still go to that, especially if that's what they can afford and who they have access to. So I'm not saying don't go, but I'm saying being mindful of what you are sharing, being mindful, and even kind of, I guess, sense with yourself, don't feel pressured, if that makes sense. Because if you talk about things that are wrong with you too fast, too soon, then you have a tendency to shut down and be altogether put off by the idea of therapy and counseling. So it may work for some, but as a professional, like, I do not recommend it. But I recognize not everybody has that same access. So I would just say, like, be mindful as you are sharing and talking to these individuals.
Because, they are not professional in that field, like you said, and they could advise you into something completely wrong that will even trigger more issue than, what you're struggling with. So it's something to be mindful of. So what would you say are the benefits of seeking mental health care and following up with the care prescribed by professionals, including compliance with therapy, and in some cases, medication prescribed for treatment from a treatment provider?
Yeah, I think when we have good mental health, we enjoy our life and our environment and the people in it, right? We can be creative, we can learn new things, try new things, and take risks. But overall, like, we increase our level of tolerance for difficulties. But when our mental health is not alignment to that, then we have higher mood swings. We are extremely anxious. We're not thinking clearly. We don't have a good sense of inner peace. Our self-esteem is poor. We are depressed. Our relationships are poor. No one is talking to us. So I think the benefit of seeking mental health is just overall quality of life. And let's say that there's nothing traumatic that has happened in your life and nothing has gone on. I think of therapy, I tell clients all the time, I'm just translating what's already in your brain. I'm just helping you piece it together and make it make sense so that you can have a better sense of self-awareness and increase your emotional intelligence of how you show up in the world. Then you can make different decisions on how you want to be and how you want to contribute to your community, if that makes sense. So even if nothing is going on, I always tell people it's always good to go just as maintenance, just to have a space to say, okay, this is what's happening. This is what I'm thinking. What are your thoughts? What connections can you help me make here? I think it just improves your overall productivity and quality of just like how you live your life.
Yes, that's so powerful. Thank you so much for. And recently I've been coming across terms such as culturally sensitive or cultural responsive therapy, which is a form of therapy that emphasizes on the client's background, ethnicity, and belief system. Why do you think culturally based therapy is important for people of color or African immigrant community?
Yeah, I think that your race, your ethnicity, your gender, all these things are elements that make your identity. And when I'm coming to therapy, I'm sharing with you basically who I am, my identity. So if you're not sensitive to that and you don't understand my background or my community, you may tell me, well, you need to cut your mother off. But in my community, family is everything. I can't just cut my mother off. So it becomes less about, you know, the client and their needs and where they are, and more about like you and your egocentrism in bringing into that space, like you clutter that space. So a culturally sensitive therapist will say, well, I understand that family is important to you. Here's some options. Like, let's talk through that and let's walk through that. So I think it helps client to feel like they belong, but also help them to feel empowered when you're culturally sensitive. They can make their choices within the realm of their culture that doesn't always equate to don't talk to them anymore. Do this, you know, tell your mother this. Like, no, actually do not go tell your mother that, because I know how African mothers are going to be. We're not going to do that. But here's another option. Here's some options that you can do. So I think cultural sensitivity allows clients to feel empowered, provides them a space where they feel heard and seen without having to give a lot of context.
Yeah, because I've heard some horrible story of some of our children who seek mental health therapy, and the parents are receptive and ask the parents to also come along and sit down in family session. And then the therapists become the one actually attacking the parents, saying that they are the reason why their child is the way the child is, without even, because they too could bring their own baggage into the session. So sometimes that will also have a lot of impact in treatment as well. I understand when a client works with a therapist with similar lived experience, it offers security and affirmation, specifically dealing with religious and cultural issues. Do you think that a client who may have different identity or background, which in turn could broaden your perspective on issues? Because you are only in Houston.
Yes. So you're saying, does different clients help me to broaden my perspective? Yeah,
let's assume I'm seeking therapies and I've come across many other Africans who may be therapists, but it's not really working for me because I think they have their own baggage that they bring into the session. Is it okay for me to seek other help from other people that has no other background from where I'm coming from?
Oh, absolutely. Because it's really about finding someone that you can trust. That's really what it's about. Now, you are the only person who can decide who's best for you because it's your journey. And the biggest thing I tell clients on day one, like, I want to build rapport, because if you don't trust me, then what we doing here? Like, it's not going to work. Right. So if you find that you connect better with somebody from a different background than you, then absolutely go for that. It's your journey. Right. The therapist is just there as a guide. They should not be the one leading it. You should be very much in charge of that. So I absolutely recommend that if that's what they feel comfortable and connected to.
So what are the best ways to find the right therapist? What would you give advice, the best way to find the right therapist?
I think, first of all, you need to understand, why am I seeking therapy and what do I want to get out of it? So once you understand why, so like, do I have a mental health illness? Am I on medication already? You know, all these things, then you seek a therapist kind of based off of like their specialization. So if I am depressed, I'm not going to seek a therapist who has no experience in depression. So that helps you kind of narrow it down. After I found someone whose expertise and competence matches what I'm looking for, I then can go into a little bit more. Do I prefer male or female? Who am I more receptive to? Because my bias is going to play a factor. If I've never got along with men all my life that make me feel uncomfortable, then it may not be wise to seek a men therapist kind of situation. So male or female, their race and gender. Do I want somebody who looks like me or not? Am I okay with giving context? Do I not want to give context? Right. Also, therapists have different times of day that they work. thinking about your work schedule, when you can meet. So you simply start with the high level and then you just begin to filter. Then once you get your list, I would say of top 3, then you call them up. Most therapists offer a 15-minute consultation. You know, get understand of the vibe. What are they saying? Have 1 or 2 questions ready for them. Do you feel like this person can connect? But even sometimes, even if you narrow it down to 1, you have a session. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 sessions before you can just say, I don't think I like you, or this is not it. And that happens to me all the time. And that's okay. And I tell clients, look, you may get into a second session and realize I'm not the best fit for you. That is perfectly okay. I want you to find who's the best fit for you. So I would think ultimately, like, not giving up on the journey of finding the right therapist, because you may go through a lot and it may take a while. It's not a one size fits all, and not every shoe fits everybody. So as long as you're persistent, you're consistent, and you're willing to continue to take that risk, then it does work out best.
Thank you so much for that. I've even heard of other people saying that, seek somebody like-minded, ask for their certificate. If they have certain certificate that is extra, what club do they belong to? If they also seek therapists themselves, because this therapy will also seek therapy themselves, so that's what it is. So what are the best resources that have helped you through your journey in establishing yourself and become who you are today?
Oh, for me? Wow, that's huge. So like books or what I've read or things that I've used? Okay. Well, there's this one book that I read that I constantly read over and over. It's called Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. That book was really great. There's another book called Mother Hunger. It's kind of talking about the relationship between the daughter and mother, how to heal from that. I think that book was really great. Another one, The Body Keeps the Score. I think that one is really, really good. Let me see what other resources that have helped me. Honestly, I think another resource, and this is not a book, I've surrounded myself with like 2 women in particular who are also mental health therapists and also in business. These women have been like my cheerleader, my motivator, my people like I brainstorm with that kind of like help me along the way. So surrounding myself with like-minded people is also really helpful as I was doing this and becoming journey, but not only my business, but also my personal life. These are like also my friends. So the people you surround yourself with really, really matter. And I don't share like my business or my ideas with everybody. I know that I can trust these particular women with things that I do. And I also think, honestly, my husband, he's like my biggest advocate and my biggest cheerleader as well. I've been married for 10 years. And we always talk about like, wow, like, remember where we were 10 years ago and what we were doing? But he's my biggest advocate, my biggest cheerleader. So I think like the growth that I've had, and he's seen me before I became a therapist to now. He's like, no, you can do it. It'll be great. It'll be fine. And I mean, obviously we all have our issues, but I would say like he's definitely like my number one cheerleader.
Wow, that's so wonderful. So how can a listener connect with you online or seek your professional help or follow you on social media?
Yeah, so there are a number of ways. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, all these social media networks. It's the same handle. It's at Ireti, IRETI counseling. You can email me hello@ireticounseling.com, or you can go to my website, which is www.ireticounseling.com.
Does your mom have a pet name for you?
A pet name? Actually, no. Dami. She always just called me Dami. That's interesting. I'm going to go ask her. My dad had one. He used to call me Fumi because my middle name was Fumilaya.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to go ask her, Mommy, why you don't have a pet name for me? Good question.
No, but you know what? Because the name, because one thing that you said that actually I wanted to explain.
Yes.
African culture, we might not say we love you as a child, because I have my own 2 children too. My 24-year-old always asking me, you don't say I love you. I say, I call you or call me.
Oh, yeah.
I say, so I explained to her what okome means, that is like a love language. I say, yes, it's like calling you my husband, which means I carry you on the high level.
High esteem.
So in Yoruba culture, we might not have, even in African culture, we might not say the word of love for our children, but there's a way that we show it that is completely different. Because we cannot compare the European culture with how they express love is different from the way other
cultures express it.
Love, so that's what it, because I've come across many of this kind of talk. So So that's why I tend to explain it, in that aspect. So thank you so much, Damilola. Actually, I have a niece who is also Damilola.
Oh, good. There's more in the world.
More in the world. So Pansa continue to normalize conversation about the importance of seeking professional therapy and counseling for members of our community when the need arises. As I always discuss, as we publicly continue to talk about issues within our community, we're actually shredding away stigma associated with uncomfortable dialogue. I really want to thank you, Damilola Adeshina, for this wealth of knowledge that you brought to our community regarding the importance of subjects on seeking mental health care and disbanding the stigma associated with mental health illness. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
I appreciate your conversation, and I know a lot of people will really enjoy this conversation.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you for having me. This was great. I learned something new. I'm going to go ask my mom, what's my pet name?
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Pansa Live Podcast. We hope to have you back with us in the next episode as we continue to explore the nuances of the African immigrant experience. If you'd like to connect with us, you can email us at talk@pansapansa.org. That is talk@pansapansa.org. And follow us on Instagram at pansa.pansaforum. Until next time, remember to spread kindness and love. Thank you and take care of yourselves.